Dr. David Bull's Sunday Surgery.
So this is a big question. This was in the Times earlier in the week with the headline, "Why are more young people getting cancer?" Now, as we know, cancer is not rare. Half of us will get it in our lifetime. But obviously, this is all about the Princess of Wales, Kate Middleton. I think people were very shocked about the diagnosis, and we've talked about it a great deal. Now, of the 375,000 new cancer cases in the UK every single year, just 1 in 10 are currently in those aged under 50. But this pattern is changing, and there seems to be a rising tide of early-onset cancer. Research suggests an extra 10,000 adults aged 18 to 49 are getting a cancer diagnosis every single year in the United Kingdom, compared with the 1990s. And that is a trend that's not just happening here in the UK, it is happening around the world. Now, several studies have drawn attention to this global surge in cancers in the young. There was a team at the University of Edinburgh found that worldwide new cases of cancer in under 50s rose 79% between 1990 and 2019 to 3.26 million. The question is, what is going on? Well, joining us now is Professor Angus Dalgleish, who's Professor of Oncology at St George's University in London. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? And just, I mentioned that study then done at the University of Edinburgh. There was another one looking in Northern Ireland as well. They also showed the rate of early onset cancers had increased by 20.5%. Can you shed some light on that? Why would we be starting to see this, not just in the UK, but also around the world?
You're quite right. First of all, it is throughout the world, and many other countries you've not mentioned have reported exactly the same thing. And it has been going on for quite some time. I first became aware of it in the 2010, 11, 12, when I started to notice that there were a lot of patients presenting with colorectal cancer who were in their late 30s, early 40s. And this was extremely unusual. And I noted that other people were seeing this, and it became a real trend. Now, of the other cancers, I think it's much later that this has become evident for the non-abdominal cancers, as it were. But you have to think, what is going on? What has changed with this generation? Is it a lifestyle, or is it genetics? Well, we know genetics are very important for bowel cancer, but it's a fairly stable thing. It's not a good enough explanation, I don't believe. And you really do have to look at diet. I mean, we think the diet and everything you're exposed to in the diet, especially processed foods, a lack of very good raw vegetables, etc., and a lot of these people could explain what we know about the link between diet and certainly bowel cancer. And Dennis Burkitt, who was involved with associating the Epstein-Barr virus with Burkitt's lymphoma in Africa, went on in his latter work to show that the diet and roughage correlated beautifully with bowel cancer. So with that scientific base, you have to look and say, has there been a big change? Well, there has. And the first culprit has to really be processed food as opposed to non-processed, good, fresh, non-processed food.
And of course, part of that diet is the lack of fibre in the diet. Now, could you just explain to people as well, there's a lot of work going on about the microbiome. This is really looking at the bacteria that we actually talked about this earlier. The fact is we have natural bacteria, don't we, in our guts. Now, if we're not eating the right diet, or indeed if you have antibiotics, you then kill off that natural bacteria, you replace them with other bacteria. And it seems increasingly likely the microbiome, your own makeup of bacteria in the gut, is actually fundamental to keeping you fit and healthy.
Without doubt, and with association with cancer, my colleagues and I have been interested in immunotherapy, using these new immunotherapy antibodies, etc., to treat cancer. First, it was very successful in melanoma, but it's slowly rolling out to the other tumours. Started to note that the good responders were associated with a certain flora in the microbiome, whereas the bad responders had a different microbiome. So there was a great push to, can you convert the bad to the good? And this went as far as doing experiments with bluntly, fecal transplants, right? Trying to get people with good microbiome to the people with bad, and then retreating them and seeing if that improved things. Well, it did. But fortunately, there's a much simpler explanation of how you can have a good microbiome, and it is the high-fiber diet. And one of the conferences I went to some years ago, I was most impressed that rather than having to go to have fecal transplants, a mere change of the diet from an ordinary processed diet to a high roughage, high-fiber diet ended up with a good microbiome. So once again, it says this is not magic or complex or expensive. You just have to change your diet.
And I find this intriguing because many people in this country simply don't eat enough fibre. And when I lived in the United States, I started buying a fibre supplement, and I take it every single day, and it has a huge impact. How do people improve the fibre in their diet? You mentioned eating naturally, making sure we should be cooking from scratch, not eating processed foods, particularly processed meat, red meats, and so on. How do people improve their fibre intake?
Well, the fibre is raw and natural substances, like fruit and porridge and roughage, etc., as opposed to highly processed foods, which is very common. For instance, if you have sausages and bacon, there's an awful lot of processed food in that. And I myself, probably like you, used to have that when I was young a lot, but now I can deliberately try and avoid those, certainly unless it's a special occasion or something. And I think you can do that. With regards to exactly what's high fibre and what's not, there just every weekend there are cookery supplements and dietary advice in every major newspaper and magazine that people can follow to have a high fibre diet that's to their liking and one that maybe they really like to switch to.
What do you make of that, Dr. Irene? So I actually take this powdered fibre supplement. Do you? I didn't know that. Another thing we have in common. But I have to say, it's kind of changed my life.
Yeah, I think it's very important. Morning, Angus. I think, this whole thing about we need to get people back to eating proper food because processed food is even masticated for us so that children are getting orthodontic problems more than they used to because they're not developing their jaw muscles. I'm wondering, Angus, we've spoken about food and colon cancer, but we've seen a rise in all other cancers as well. Do you think that processed food leading to obesity is then driving those other cancers?
Yes, that's a very good point because the processed food is associated with obesity. And once you get into obesity, I mean, my simplification of obesity, I spent most of my life looking at really what causes cancer and what drives it. And I came to the conclusion that the main cause and driver of cancer is chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is caused either by chronic infections, viruses, like the human papillomavirus with cervix and some bowel drives this chronic inflammation. And then the other cancers that don't have infectious causes are again associated with chronic inflammation, smoking and lung cancer, etc. So I think that to